King Jewelz here, checking in for the Tuesday edition of the Run the Jewelz Facebook live show and vidcast series. I know we're doing something a little bit different today, and so thank you all for watching us live or tuning into the replay. I'm your host, Julian Smartrimple, King Jewelz here for the Run the Jewelz podcast and also vidcast series. We're diving in for episode 192 today. We're making a few slight changes to the show because we are introducing this month some of our Quick Jewelz teachings. And so if you are not familiar with our Quick Jewelz teachings, you're going to be in for a treat because we are going to be teaching different subjects about how to start, how to maintain, and also how to scale your podcast or your live show. And so episode 192, which is what we're kicking off today, is how to attain speaking engagements through podcasting, how to attain speaking engagements through podcasting. This is a very important subject to myself, especially because I am a trainer and also a public and motivational speaker. And literally, this is one of the main reasons I got into podcasting was to diversify my speaking skills, whether it was in getting into voiceover work, which I still plan on doing for my long-term career, but even being able to have audio and also additional video and visual content for my speaking engagements and also for our business. And so if you are someone who is a speaker, if you're someone who is a trainer, even if you're someone that wants to aspire to do speaking or even voiceover work in any capacity, definitely stay tuned for all of the jewels that we're going to be dropping this evening for episode 192. For those who are just joining us for the first time, the RTJ Lifestyle Podcast Show was created to spread inspiration to young professionals and also millennial entrepreneurs who want to learn wisdom on how to shine brighter in their careers or their businesses. And so if you're just tuning in, you are one of our jewels that are rocking with us this evening. This is going to be a teaching quick jewel segment that we're just starting off this season for season 4. Thank you for tracking with us. But we have our podcast on all podcast platforms. You can listen to us on any location that you stream your music or listen to your favorite podcast on. All you got to do is just look to the left of me, and you'll see the image of our podcast artwork, our art cover, and you can just search for the Run the Jewelz podcast on any podcast platform. You can listen to us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Google, Pandora, iHeart, Amazon, Audible, any place that you listen to your favorite podcast. Definitely go and tune in. We even dropped our new episode. Each and every Tuesday, we drop a new episode, how to break a covenant of pain and trauma with Delta Williams, one of our star affiliate partners. And also she has her own podcast, The Midnight Prayer Watch. But definitely go and listen to her recent episode, How to Break a Covenant with Pain and Trauma, on our podcast. And so if you are interested in being on the RTJ podcast show, all you got to do is fill out our interest form. This is to see with our team if you have what it takes, if you are a young professional, especially, or entrepreneur that wants to share your testimony or wants to share potentially your product or your service with our audience of millennials, especially who we target, and young professionals and entrepreneurs. You can feel free to fill out the link that we're putting in the comment section in order to sign up for our interest form to be on a future broadcast. Right now, we're already locked and loaded going into the spring, but we still have a couple slots for the early summer as of right now for season 4, besides a few cancellations, which is why, of course, we're making our changes on the production side of the show to, again, still give you the heat, still give you the jewels that we're dropping each and every week, and to be efficient and to also be consistent. These are two of the main goals as a podcaster, or even as someone who is a creative, that you have to be consistent. And so shout out to all of those creatives out there that are making some major moves with their product, with their service, or even with their live show or podcast. But we are going to be dropping for episode 192 some major jewels on how to attain speaking engagements through podcasting. Again, if you're listening to the replay or watching us live, we're talking about how to literally use your podcast, just like I have, in order to gain speaking engagements. But we're going to switch it up a little bit today by honoring our podcast guest sponsor for tonight's episode. And so each and every episode, we have a podcast sponsor that we literally highlight that has a paid sponsorship spot on our show. This is another way we choose to monetize the RTJ podcast, which are many ways to monetize your podcast. We don't just do this each and every week as a hobby. We may have started off that way, but we've listened to those who have already been there, done that, and those who are coaching us and mentoring us in order to make our podcast a live production. And so you are going to be in for a treat if you are wanting to monetize a show, monetize a podcast, and even to make it international on podcast platforms. You're in the right place to be. And so let's take a look and see who our podcast VIP sponsor is for tonight's episode 192. Let's all take a look, y'all. So our podcast sponsor for tonight's episode comes from none other than Orgain, organic protein. You can see the link that's in the comment section below in order to get your exclusive Smart Jewels deal for purchasing Orgain organic protein. We swear by that with our team of health and awareness ambassadors, as I like to call ourselves. Even myself, I love Orgain products, very much so, are easy on the stomach. They don't sit on you like a lot of the whey proteins that many of us that have been in the gym for any length or amount of time. It does not hurt your stomach. It's all plant-based products that they use, and they also taste good. They even have a strawberry flavor that they just launched, I believe, this week. Because we get the exclusive updates from Orgain as them being our sponsor for tonight's episode and one of our affiliate partners. Definitely, if you are wanting to have some clean-based protein products or liquid powder or products that are liquid-based, you definitely want to go and visit Orgain Organic Protein and use the exclusive discount code SMART, SMART, JEWELZ, in order to purchase your Orgain organic protein product. And shout out to our VIP sponsor for tonight's very special episode 192, Orgain organic protein. And so we're going to get ready to continue showing you all how to attain speaking engagements through podcasting. And so, of course, this is something that I would have to be able to do successful in order to be able to share this knowledge of our quick jewels teaching segment this evening with you all. And so just as I said, I started off speaking back in 2012, right after I came out of college at Kennesaw State University. And literally, I came into an organization by the name of Toastmasters International. Shout out to Toastmasters. If you are not familiar with it and you have an aspiration to get into speaking, motivational speaking, or training, I highly recommend Toastmasters International. Even as myself being a coach and also a member, it has benefited, I'll probably say 80 to 85% of my speaking talents and my speaking skills being sharpened. But they're an international speaking and leadership organization that is by far one of the best investments that you can make in yourself. And that led me to be able to speak at different conferences for educators, different conferences for after school care workers, different conferences for literally creatives. I've even spoken at conferences for creatives, but mostly in the education and also after school space is where I've thrived in being able to speak at many different conferences here in Georgia, even in Orlando, and even abroad, being able to speak overseas and train overseas in Liberia, all the way to Mexico. And I'm even looking forward to going to Central and also South America later this year to do some speaking engagements. But this is something that you have to start where you are. One of our mottos for RTJ and also for Smart Jewelz Enterprises, our organization that powers the RTJ podcast, is always to begin anywhere. Begin and start where you are. And so that's what I did. I literally was able to get into different conference workshops to be a conference speaker or to be even a trainer or a facilitator. And that led me to, again, start the podcast 3 seasons ago, just to have another outlet for me to showcase my hosting skills and also to showcase my social proof for speaking engagements that were virtual and online. We were even doing this for the RTJ show before COVID even hit. And thankfully, I know Yah gave us direct insight to start the podcast before COVID so that we can have social proof. We have literally over 191 episodes outside of today that we have hosted and that we have literally put out in order to have that proof of concept that our podcast has grown. We started off on Be Live. Shout out to Be Live doing our live podcast 3 seasons ago. And then we've transitioned into a better platform called StreamYard, which is what we stream from for the last 2 seasons. And so if you are wanting to do live streaming podcast interviews, StreamYard is definitely one of the platforms and businesses that we also recommend. We even are going to get them to sponsor one of our future episodes this season, and you could even sign up for a discount rate through StreamYard. And so stay tuned for that. Some of our smart jewels that follow us each and every week, because we have a ton of businesses that we are partnering with and even allowing to sponsor our podcast this season. But without further ado, we have at least 3 major speaking engagements coming up this year that are, of course, myself speaking on behalf of our Run the Jewelz podcast and also Smart Jewelz Enterprises. But literally, I'm getting in the door to these conferences just through saying that I have a successful podcast named Run the Jewelz that is in its 4th season, and that we have over 191 episodes from guests all the way from Africa to Europe, to Central and South America. And then, of course, here in the U.S., we're looking to still plant our flag in Asia and also on Australia and potentially Antarctica later this year. But we have an international podcast show. And so that led me and also our team to be able to land a speaking engagement with the Black Pod Festival. If you do not know about the Black Pod Festival, you definitely need to look them up, especially if you are a person of color, a king or a queen. This is an organization and also a podcast network that I would highly suggest tapping into and getting involved with. They have a great plethora amount of services and also outreach that they help beginning podcasters or even veteran OG podcasters that have been doing this for over 100 to 200 episodes, and they're just looking to expand and scale their podcasts. And so literally, I came across this organization on IG. I love IG. Shout out to Instagram. That's where we are able to be blessed by getting a ton of our guests and also even partners that we partnered with for sponsorships just through being an active participant on Instagram. And so they're heavily active on Instagram, literally soliciting and marketing and even showing rare jewels to be able to show us how to podcast successfully. There are many individuals that are on YouTube and even on Facebook and Instagram that are showcasing that they are professional podcasters, but they don't have a network. They don't have a group of podcast shows or podcast hosts that they are literally putting out as social proof of product. And so they're just literally advocating for themselves as being a podcaster, but do they have a network? That's one of the main things that you want to know as a potential podcaster, or even if you are a current podcaster. Always search for podcast networks. Black Pod is only one network that we are affiliated with, but they are literally what they say, a podcast network for Black people, for people that look like myself, for the kings and the queens that stem from by way of Mother Africa, or Akebulon, which is also what it is called. And so whether you are a Caribbean native that is of African-American descent, whether you are a U.S. African-American, whether you are a traditional African brethren, or even if you're any part of Europe or Asia, literally, this is a network that is meant for you. They have a festival that's coming up this May. Shout out to, again, Black Pod Festival Atlanta here in the ATL, where I currently reside. And I'm going to be having the opportunity and the ability to speak, to share our knowledge and our insight that myself and our team have done for over 3 seasons now on how to repurpose your podcast for creative marketing. Our session is going to be Saturday, May 28th at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. If you're in the ATL, definitely go and sign up for discounted tickets. We're even going to put on our page where you can sign up for a discounted rate. But this is a way to invest in yourself. I'm a financial coach and also a personal development coach that always tells our clients that you need to invest in yourself. But before you do that, you need to have an investment budget. You need to have an investment line item on your budget. If you're not budgeting, this is something that we also offer services with financial coaching and financial consulting. But literally, you have to have an investment budget for yourself each month. This is a perfect example for you to even locate different speaking engagements, different conferences that you can share your expertise at, such as the Black Pod Festival that we'll be speaking at May 28th through the 29th at the Loudermilk Conference Center in the ATL. But you can literally invest in your craft, invest in your talents. Just from being a podcaster, you can have opportunities to speak virtually or even to speak in person. This conference, luckily, is going to be an in-person conference. They're not going to be having virtual sessions, but literally, you can find virtual podcast conferences by just searching on Google. By the way, I'm going to show you a little bit of the jewels and how to search for podcast conferences shortly. But I definitely wanted to start off by giving a big up to Black Pod Festival ATL, who is hosting their podcast conference festival May 28th through May 29th at the Loudermilk Conference Center. And again, if you're in the ATL, for those who are not in the ATL, they may be live streaming it in some of the sessions, but you have to be in person to really get all the gems and the jewels that all of our presenters that are going to be presenting at this festival are going to be giving the attendees. And so thank you again, Black Pod Festival, for allowing me to be able to get this opportunity this year to, again, share my expertise in how to repurpose your podcast for creative marketing. There's many different ways literally to create a podcast, but you have to, number one, be consistent at finding how to get your podcast brand and your podcast show off the ground. Literally, a lot of people, they get sidetracked and also get hype at the beginning because it's a new idea. It's a shiny object that they're excited about hearing all these podcasters. Even shout out to YouTube, because YouTube has grants that they're presenting to podcasters that have their podcast on YouTube. And so we're even going to be finding out if we qualify for those grants on YouTube this year, this season that we are in right now. But if you're not in the race already, you're already behind, because literally podcast is taking over the waves of even listening to your favorite shows, or even listening to your favorite broadcast on television. Podcasting, they say by 2030, is going to be 80 to 85% of our listening marketplace of what we millennials and even Gen Zers who are coming up right after our millennial generation are going to be tapped into listening to. These are some quick jewel facts that you need to know, especially for those who are wanting to get in the game of this podcast world, or even having a live show that you can turn into a podcast. And so I'm going to really quick go through some of the segments that they have for the upcoming Pod Festival, and then we'll circle back to show you how to research where you can have your voice heard as a podcast host or even as a podcaster. And so take a look with me really quick. This is their website. It's really clean, you all. They are legit, and they are definitely here to help, especially a lot of people of color and a lot of kings and queens out there that are trying to get around a community of like-minded creatives and like-minded podcasters. And so their event schedule is associated into 4 different tracks. They have the growth track, the launch track, monetization track, and also the service provider track. They're not playing, you all. This is a legit conference that is being put on by the founder, Ona, who is the founder of Black Pod Collective. You could definitely see her speakers page by clicking speakers page right here to find out a little bit about Ona. But she's a dynamic queen that is really about community building, and especially community building with people of color. And so you are going to hear from her at 9 o'clock. I'm going to be speaking on Saturday again in the growth track. The growth track is literally when you're getting off the starting blocks of your podcast and you're trying to grow and also to maintain your podcast. I don't know how many people right when COVID hit that were trying to launch a podcast, and they had a couple episodes, and then literally after a month, you didn't hear from them again. You couldn't hear from any of the folks that were starting a YouTube channel or even a podcast show back when COVID first hit. And so what does that say? That says that they didn't have a marketing plan or even a consistency or a contingency plan for their podcast or their live show to sustain itself. It was just literally a bright idea potentially that they had on the spot, but they didn't have any plan or any vision or any benchmark set in place to again be consistently releasing episodes for their podcast or live show. And so that was a downside for a lot of podcasters and also a lot of people that were starting YouTube channels right when the pandemic first hit. But if you are wanting to learn how to, again, grow your podcast, how to launch your podcast, how to monetize it, or even be a service provider, which is what we are even getting into this year for our services by way of Smart Jewels Enterprises. Literally, you need to be at this pod festival May 28th through 29th. You see all of the different sessions. I'm only going to show you a few for Saturday. Building a community around your podcast, hosted by Tiffany Ellis. Monetizing a niche podcast. It's very important to have a niche podcast that you are literally targeting a certain audience of people and clients or audience members that are going to be listening to your podcast, which they call themselves listeners in the podcast world, not viewers like on YouTube, but they're listening. And so she's going to be talking about Miss Ariel Smith, monetizing a niche podcast. Pinterest for podcast marketing. A lot of podcasters are very much so creatives that use Pinterest. I even learned this last year when we were in season 3, that there's so many different avenues that people use for podcast marketing. And so Precious Rogers is going to be talking about Pinterest for podcast marketing, promoting your podcast via social media, which is an invaluable jewel that you need to focus on when you're launching your podcast. And that's going to be by Miss Antoinette Blake. Audio storytelling through sound design. Literally, it is something that I've learned as a speaker in Toastmasters, is that storytelling is one of the components of being a traditional speaker. There's at least, I believe, 12 main tracks of professional or motivational speakers that most of us follow. And storytelling is one of the most critical ones that you need to be working on, even right now as a podcaster, or even right now as a speaker, which they taught me in Toastmasters International. Shout out to Toastmasters again. But Angel Ford is going to be talking about audio storytelling through sound design. They have a networking seminar that they're going to be doing for like minds to come together and build. And then your boy, King Jules, is going to be coming up with how to repurpose your podcast for creative marketing again. We're going to be talking about strategies such as visuals, CRMs, sales funnels, live streaming, and digital marketing, which are going to be explained in practical steps for using your podcast audio or your podcast video or visual content for having these strategies put in place. Podcast and Profits, Follow the Money by Karen Lenore. That's going to be a session that I know I'm interested in hearing more about. I'm speaking at the same time, but I'm more than likely going to catch the live recording. But Bold Branding Builds a Better Podcast, Tanya McKenzie. How to Turn Your Podcast into Your Portfolio, Ashton Carter. He's speaking at the same time as me, but I'm even going to literally tap into his session afterwards to see how can I continue to build up our Smart Jewels network of podcast shows that we are launching and that we are helping launch under our Smart Jewels network. And Recognizing and Overcoming Burnout as a Creative Entrepreneur by Cassandra Dunbar. Automating Guest Onboarding. LaVista Jones is speaking on automating your guest onboarding. And last but not least, Andrew Snorton is talking about pushing the envelope. And so these are just some quick jewels of the guests and the presenters that are going to be speaking at the Black Pod Festival here in the ATL at the Loudermilk Center, Conference Center that is in Atlanta over by Auburn Avenue area. And literally, they're going to be sharing their talents and their skill set along with myself and a whole another group of kings and queens that are there. But when it comes to, again, learning how to attain speaking engagements through your podcasting efforts or your podcast show, we're going to even take a quick search right now just to be able to show you podcast festivals that are coming up. Podcast festivals 2022. Literally, we're going to be showing you how to search for podcast festivals this year. Always when you're searching, what I've learned from doing speaking engagements, you always want to type in what type of festivals are you looking for, or what type of conference are you looking for. A lot of times, festivals are smaller events than conferences, which a lot of niche festivals are hosted by creatives that are usually more niched down. They're not like the big ticket conferences that run over 3 to 5 days out of the week. They're typically going to be a 1 to 3 day festival that is there for the guests to attend and to learn from a centralized niche of information. And so what we always are taught with our team to search for speaking engagements, type in exactly what specifically you are looking for. We're looking for podcast festivals. The year right now, of course, is 2022, but if it is 2023, 2024, you would type in that year. But we're also looking for podcast festivals in Atlanta, just so we can see what podcast festivals are being hosted in Atlanta. If you are into traveling, like we've done before, in traveling to different states to speak at conferences, you got a budget for that. You got to make sure that you have your hotel budget, your entertainment budget if you're going to stay after the conference to do some socializing, some networking, or even sightseeing to see the city or even the country that you're in. But you want to make sure, if you could only stay local, that you type in where is your local closest city or major city that you are in. And so we're doing podcast festivals in Atlanta for this year because we are going to be traveling, but we want to show you all how to see how simple it is when you have a podcast. Again, these are for those that have a podcast, that you have a show already, because you have to have social proof of concept, typically on applications where they're looking for speakers or for workshop presenters. They're going to ask you simple questions like, what is the name of your podcast? Where can we find your podcast? About how many listeners do you have that download your podcast each month or each episode? They're going to ask you simple questions like that. And most importantly, if you are a traditional speaker or a workshop presenter, they will ask you for literally your title of what your title of your presentation or your workshop is, the length of that presentation and workshop, and also a description. A lot of times I was in conferences where you can see that people did not take the time to break down their description for their workshop or their presentation because it sounded like crap. It sounded like they just put it together the night before, or that they just copied and pasted it from another conference or workshop presenter on Google. Literally, event hosts, especially speaker managers that are usually the people that book the speakers at conferences or festivals, they look through those descriptions. And so what I would suggest in advance, after, of course, you get your podcast, which we have services that we can help you launch your podcast for this year, but you have to make sure you are working on speech descriptions or workshop descriptions that you can literally tailor to each festival or each conference that you apply for a speaking engagement at. And so we already see that they have the Black Pod Festival, which is where we're going to be speaking at May 28th. But they also have Mark Maron, who is going to be, I think, doing a live podcast show at the Buckhead Theater in April. Also, Mamma Mia has the last podcast live show that is also going to be on March 25th. But we're not looking for that. We want to keep it rolling. And so we're looking where it has Buzzsprout, where we can search for the best podcast conferences to attend for 2022, 2023. Let's click on that. So Buzzsprout is definitely a podcast platform, a hosting platform where you can host your podcast at. And this is where the real meat and the real jewels are at. You got to be specific. You can't just be wasting time when you're searching, or if you have a personal assistant that can do this for you. If you're blessed in that regard to find someone that can search for it for you, literally, you may have to do it yourself. And so we're breaking it down, the step-by-step process of seeing what podcasts fit your niche. What we do is we talk to young professionals, and also we talk to educators. That's what we do a lot with our speaking engagements. And so this first podcast festival or podcast day is called the Africa Podcast Day. This is happening virtually It already passed, and so it was in February. It was free, and we cannot apply for that. So we have to keep it moving. They have also this month here in Atlanta a voiceover conference, which is $295 to $795. But if you are into voiceovers, or if you want to become a voiceover artist, this may be a really good conference for you to either be a guest at, or right now it's too late, because usually for podcast festivals or podcast conferences or any conference, you're going to need to at least sign up about 4 to 5 months in advance. If it's a legit conference, they're going to literally have signups for speaking proposals or speaker proposals at least 4 to 5 months at the least in advance. And so for those who are looking to speak in the next few months, bye. You got to wait. You got to hold off, boo-boo. You got to hold off, king. You got to hold off, queen, and look for things that are coming up in the fall, or things that are coming up in the winter time, things that are maybe even coming up at the beginning of next year. And so we're going to cruise through the voiceover. We see Podcast Movement Evolutions. That's in LA. We're not looking to be in LA, so we can't do that. But here is something that we may need to still look into. They have international podcast festivals that you may or may not want to write off as a business trip. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're someone that is into traveling and using that travel budget to also use as a tax write-off for your LLC, for your S Corp, or for your corporation, these are ways to use festivals or even speaking engagements to write off for your business. And so they have one in Brussels in April. They have one in Sweden, the Radio Days Europe in Sweden. And then they have a podcast show one in London. Many of these, of course, are right around the corner. And so these are not ones that we're looking for. They do have a PodFest Expo in Orlando, but it's still not hitting at least 4 months out. We want to look for things that are 4 to 5 months out minimum, so that we know that they're still going to be accepting speakers. And so you see the Black Pod Festival right here. They're even one of the sponsors at the Black Pod Festival. And so this conference is not a rinky-dink conference. They have podcast sponsors, you all. They have sponsorship spots of businesses and companies that have invested in their festival to be a success. And so this is something that you could also have your business or even your services marketed as a sponsor at potential conferences. This is the give and trade that people don't talk a lot about that are speakers, because some speakers get into the well-known conferences by being a sponsor, a low level sponsor, not a high level where it's like 10 stacks to 20 stacks, but you may be able to come in at a couple hundred, anywhere from like 150 to maybe 500 as a lower level sponsor. And your business logo is still put on all the branding of the brochures. Your business logo may even be put on the website. And so these are things that you are very much so able to use as quick jewels to get into the right conference to speak at. But these are some that are coming up in June. Podstock, it's in Trenton, New Jersey. Craft and Commerce in Boise, Idaho in June. Podcast Movement, which is in August. This is the time frame that we are looking at getting into a potential conference or a potential festival to speak at. And so this is in Dallas, Texas. They're doing audio drama, industry, marketing, monetization, cultural, and advocacy. This may be even something that my team and myself may want to get in, because it leaves us enough time out to plan and also to change up our speaking descriptions and our speaking titles. And last but not least, you want to make sure that you are looking for the next year in advance. They have conferences that they've already put together. They're just literally waiting for the location to be stamped, or even the prices that they're going to be charging for attendees. But conferences like the Evolutions one, the Podcast Movement for next year, these are ones that you want to track and also check back on throughout the year, so that you can sign up well in advance, and you'll be that much closer to being one of the speakers if you have social proof of concept, which means you have a podcast or you have a live show You have an active podcast that is releasing episodes weekly, bi-monthly, consistently, basically, and also that you are able to show consistent progress with your podcast listenership going up. Your podcast listenership should not stay stagnant, and it should not go down. It should go up if you are being consistent. We started off with literally, I believe, around 15 to 20 podcast listeners when we first started off a year ago, releasing episodes from season 1. And now we're getting into episodes from season 2 being released, and we're getting closer to 100 listeners per episode. We are setting benchmarks for each of our quarters throughout the year to increase our listenership at least 5 to 7%. That's 5 to 7%. That's minimum. 5 to 7% is attainable. 5 to 7% is realistic because you have a plan, and also you know your vision of where you want your podcast to go. And so these are just some quick jewels, you all, that I wanted to share with you this evening on showing you how to turn your podcast into speaking engagements. This is the real sauce, as I like to say, where it's at. This is where it really should be your focus when you are trying to get your speaking engagements and to get your podcast to become monetized. You are able to turn your podcast or your live show into a business. It's not just like you see a lot of people doing for hobby purposes or for free. We literally started off for free. We literally started off as a project, but now we have seen the fruit. We have seen the return on our investment. We've seen how we are able to monetize and how we're able to grow and expand internationally. And so we're even going with our podcast show to live record different podcast guests in New Orleans, in Central America coming up this quarter. We're going to be having guests that are from outside of literally us filming here in Atlanta, Georgia, where we currently are at right now. And so that's a benefit not to just myself, that's a benefit to our team and our overall goal for the podcast, which is to be internationally recognized and internationally known. And so what is your goal for your podcast? What is your focus area for your podcast? What is your vision? Do you have a mission statement? Do you have a description for your podcast? Do you know if you want to do live podcasting or do you want to do pre-recording? These are things that you got to start thinking about, smart jewels that are watching or listening with us. These are things that you already got to start thinking about before you start the podcast. But you can have us help you with that. You can have our team of podcast creatives and also admin assistants help you get your podcast off the ground by visiting www.smartjewelsenterprises.org. That's www.smartjewelsenterprises.org. And you can sign up for a free 30-minute discovery session where we can show you how to get your podcasts launched or even how to scale or monetize your podcast that you may already have. And even, which is what we're adding in an additional service, because now your brethren, your king, Jules, is getting speaking engagements just from being a podcaster or a podcast host. We have 3 conferences that we're speaking at this year. One is here in Atlanta, one is in Orlando, and then we have another one that is also in Georgia. I believe it's in Augusta later this year. And we're doing virtual and we're doing in person. And so if you want to learn how to attain speaking engagements just through podcasting, I never would have thought this would have been another area or another lane that we can gain revenue and also gain speaking exposure just from our creative juices flowing in the podcast lane and in the podcast world. And so those are just some quick jewels, you all, I wanted to share with you this evening. Definitely tap in with us each and every week. We have some guests that are going to be stopping by throughout the rest of this month. But stay tuned for webinars and for additional workshops that we are going to be hosting later this year. Because we're not playing, y'all. We're not just doing this for entertainment. We're doing this for growth and also doing this to help others who want to take themselves to the next level. And so take a look at some of our services that we provide as we close out for what we're doing for the Run the Jewelz podcast show, and also the Smart Jewelz Network, which is our network of podcasts that we host and that we have helped launch. And so listen to the Run the Jewelz Show on all podcast platforms, but take a look and see what are some of our additional services that we have. And so again, you can have your podcast show live streamed. You can have technical assistance, admin assistance, as we call ourselves, which is what we provide for you through our coaching services and podcasting and live streaming. You can have customized show branding, or even webinars or virtual classroom courses or meetings. We have what you need to reach new audiences. All you have to do is sign up for a free 30-minute discovery session and take a look at our services at www.smartjewelzenterprises.org. Also, this is the new year to be a part of a network or a community. I can't stress enough how much we benefited and elevated our brand and our podcast just from being in a community and in a network of other podcasters and other creatives like the Black Pod Collective. And so definitely visit www.smartjewelzenterprises.org to see how we can assist you, especially if you are a speaker or a future podcaster and want to launch your brand successfully this year. Tap into our Smart Jewelz network. Season 4 is here, you all. Shout out to those who are women and queens that are doing major moves for Women's History Month, International Women's History Month, by the way. We salute you. We thank you for all that you do, the queens. We have some dynamic queens that we're going to be hosting for the rest of season 4, you all. But season 4 is here. It is here, you all. It is already launching. It is already propelling for this season. And so take a look.
That is pulling me down. Yeah, I'm trying to balance me out. My feet can't touch the ground. Yeah, I'm flying.
And so it's time to shine, you all. Whether you're ready or whether you're not, it is time to shine, you all. And so stay tuned, stay locked and loaded with us each and every Tuesday. We're going to have some quick jewel segments in teaching you how to launch and how to perfect and even how to scale and monetize your podcast or your show by providing services that our team has crafted to package out in coaching services to help you all shine bright like the bright diamond jewel you've been created to be, but also even listen to our podcast, listen to our progress from season 1 all the way now to season 4. We've shown levels of improvement. This game is about levels, you all. You can't always start at the top of the mountain. You got to grab the hold of that mountain to climb that thing. Build as you climb, as my brother Jay says. You got to build as you climb. Shout out to Jay with the RCIE Rice. And so shout out for those who have listened for episode 192. King Jewelz is signing off, but go and listen to our recent episode that we just released for our Run the Jewelz podcast show on any music or podcast streaming platform that you listen to. If you'd like to sow a seed with us, you can cash app us at $SMART, SMART, JEWELZ. That's SMART, JEWELZ. Or you can just click the link that's in the comment section to be one of our monthly Patreons. to join our Patreons for this year. We could not make this show a success without you all. And so definitely, if you are one of our donors this year that we show at the bottom of the screen each episode, thank you for being a sponsor and a donor, and also being a sower into good soil with our organization, the RTJ Show, and also the Smart Jewels Network. We could not do this thing without you, and we could not make our brand and also our podcast expand and grow without you. And so all donations are solicited. This goes back into our purchasing of products, the platform that we stream on here on StreamYard, and even into expanding the quality of our production. And so all the names that you see at the bottom of the screen have sown this season. So thank you to everyone who has been a sponsor or even a donor for season 4. And so those are all of my final jewels for tonight's episode. Stay hydrated, you all. Stay safe. And most importantly, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. There's many different opportunities that Yah gives us to shine, but it is up to us to grab hold of each and every one and to step into our greatness and to step into the light. Step into the light that he has provided us, and do not be afraid to shine, and shine bright and shine great. I'll see you all next week. King Jewel signing off. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.